Hi, I'm Agnès. Welcome to my eclectic channel. I make videos for fun. We've been working on resizing a vintage pattern. Last time we put our measurements on our sketch and we measured our gauge. We are ready to transfer this to the pattern. So here's our sketch again, and I've added my gauge. So the 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter square for me is 21 stitches wide and 25 rows tall. And here's the math we need. One formula, and a simple one at that. So let me illustrate how this works. So we're gonna work our way again from the bottom of the sweater upward. So for the bottom we need 46 centimeters. So if I put that in my formula, my actual measurements, 46 centimeters, times the gauge. What I mean by that is the row or stitch count, whatever's relevant. So here we are casting on stitches. We're talking about a horizontal extent. So we're looking at this. We're looking at the stitches. So it's going to be 45 times 21 stitches. And I divide by 10 because that's the width of my square. If you're working in inches, if you really insist, it would still work because you would put your measurement in inches here. You would put your gauge, the size of your swatch, in inches here, and you'll get stitches out of that. So it works in inches as well. So if we perform this operation, we get 96.6 stitches. And we want to round that. I could do 97 and it'd be fine for this particular pattern, but sometimes you like to have even stitches. If that's the case, then make that 98 stitches. So round to the nearest even number of stitches above. You don't want to go below. So now I know how many stitches I must cast on. 98 stitches. And then I have 12 centimeters. And then the next stage I must reach is the waist. When I get to the waist, I want to be down to 34 centimeters. So do the same calculation again. Just replacing the 46 with the 34. And we get 71. Darn it, make that 72. So now we can work out what needs to happen between the hip and the waist. We need to go down from 98 stitches to 72 stitches. That's 26 stitches. So how many decrease rows? Because a decrease row is going to decrease one stitch on each end of the row. So each row is 2 stitches down. So this translates into 13 decrease row. We must find out over how many rows. How many rows do I have to make this happen, to work those 13 decrease rows? So this is where my 12 centimeters comes in, because this must happen over 12 centimeters. That's how much height I have from the hip where I cast on my stitches to where I begin the waist. How many rows is that? We come back to our formula, so it's going to be 12 centimeters. And this time we're talking about vertically. So we're talking about rows. So instead of putting the 21 stitches, we'll be putting our 25 rows. And that's 30. So 30 rows. Over those 30 rows, we need 13 decrease rows. So if you do some loose math on it, you think about 15. 15 is half of 30. If you want to be more precise, because sometimes it won't be round numbers, you want to do your 30 rows and divide by the number of decrease rows. It comes out to 2.3, but we can only do integers in knitting, so it's going to be 2. Every 2 rows we need to decrease, we need to work a decrease row. So that means every other row, which works perfectly, because that way you can decrease every time you have a right side row, you want to work a decrease. So it's good to go back and forth to our instructions. I'm going to start to modify those instructions. I have also reproduced the diagram and I cleaned it up. We're going to fill this as we go, and we've already filled up the bottom. So how many stitches do we need to cast on? Not 52. We need 98. We still want to do our 2 rows of garter stitch, and then we are going to decrease on each end every, not 4 rows, for us it's every 2 rows, and we want to do that 13 times. And this will leave us with 72 stitches. Now we're at the waist. We want to work even until we are 12 centimeters from the start, and we're going to do our ribbing, 1 ribbing. We'll keep that at 4 centimeters. If you're really tall, you might want to increase it, but I think 4 centimeters is good for most anyone. All right, we're already at the waist. Let's keep going. So the next part we're looking at is the one where we go from the waist, where we have 72 stitches, to the bust, where we need 41 centimeters. So let's figure out how many stitches that's going to be. That's 86 stitches. And at the waist we had 72 stitches. So that means that for the bust we need to go from 72 stitches up to 86 stitches. We need plus 14 stitches. How much height do we have? This must occur over 16 centimeters. How many rows is that? 14 stitches is going to correspond to 7 increase rows, because every increase row we actually add 2 stitches, 1 on each end. It's easy to forget. So as before, we're going to take our 40 rows, divide by 7 to see how often we need to work an increase row. We get 5.7, which works out to be roughly 6. So we come back to the instructions, and when it comes from going from the waist to the bust, we want to increase one stitch each end of every 6 rows. Same, we're not changing that, it's every 6 rows, but we only need 7 times. And just to keep track, I've added the number of rows that this needs to happen over and how many stitches we need to have at the bust. And for us, we shall work even until required length to armhole. Alternatively, maybe you took a measurement from the hip to under the arm, and so you know what this is, so you need to put in your own measurement in here. I want to make a note about deciding to start the armhole, because I've made every mistake in the book, and there's 2 mistakes you can make. One is you started from too low. If you started from too low, the opening will be lower on your body and you will have a little hard time to move your arm, unless you're making some specialized, really loose sleeves or something. But for fitted sleeves, if you start them too low, you won't be free to move, and the garment will look weird when you move around. The opposite problem is even bigger, more serious if you start too late and you have tight armholes, where you know what that does. very uncomfortable. Worst case scenario, you can't wear your sweater. So speaking of armhole, yeah, let's say we get there, and now we need to round, decrease to make the armhole. So similarly to before, I would like to know how many stitches should I end up with. Right there, how many stitches do I need? I know it's not 42. What is mine? So if you made a measurement, you put your measurement here, use your gauge, and it'll give you that number, how many stitches you need. I did not make a measurement because I'm using the I'm going to use the proportions of the pattern because I look like the model, so I think it will work. So I'm going to use the same proportion. We're doing similar math. I told you it's all proportion. So here's what needs to happen. We go from 54 down to 42. I don't have 54, I have 86. So 86 to whatever number I need needs to be what 54 is to 42. So we have 42 over 54. That has to be the same as whatever I'm looking for, whatever I need to have over 86. So you do some proportionality and you get that my number needs to be 42 over 54 times 86. That turns out to be 66.9, which is 67. I don't like odd numbers, even though on this pattern it would work. But I just don't like it. So I'm going to put 68. Adding a stitch won't hurt. So for me, it's going to be 68 stitches here. And if I lost you with this little algebra here, I'm going to prove to you that I did things correctly. If you do 42 divided by 54, we get 0.78. And if we do 68, mine, divided by 86, we get 0.79. So not too bad. It's good to check. Well, I say not too bad, it's the same, 0.8. So this will work. So now I know that I will need, when I do my armhole shaping, when I'm rounding, when I'm decreasing those stitches, no matter how I do, I need to go from 86 down to 68 stitches. So here is what we have for the armholes. This is our goal. We want to go from 86 stitches down to 68. And then I've reproduced what the instructions are. And I might have conveyed earlier that I don't like I always kind of panic when it comes to shaping the armholes, but it's really not that hard. So let's look at what they did first. What they did on each side, they bound off 3 stitches. They say bind off 3 stitches at the beginning of the next 2 rows. This means that you're doing 3 on each side. So I'm focusing on just one side. One side minus 3. And then on each side, we decrease 1 every knit row, which means a right side row. We decrease 1 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. And that's how you make that curve of the armhole. So let's see what we need. In our case, we need to decrease 86 stitches down to 68. That means we need to decrease 18 stitches. That's overall. On each side, we're going to need 9 stitches. And we want to have the same kind of curve. So what you notice here is that for them, it was 6 stitches on each side, not 9. But they did half of it all at once, and then half of it gradual on decreased rows. So we're going to do the same thing, and there's no half to 9, no like integer half. So we don't need to sweat this because this is just 1 stitch. You could do bind off 4 and then 5 more, or bind off 5 and then 4 more. It doesn't make a difference. Pick one. So I'm going to do, it doesn't make a significant difference, so pick one. So maybe to be safer. So if you're busty, do 5 first. Bind off 5 of them. But this is just not going to even register. Like a stitch is so small. But anyway. So we're going to do 5 first, and then we'll do the other 4. Bind off 5, and then do the other 4. So let's come back to our instructions. And so for us, we are going to do not 4, we need 5. And then we are going to do 1 stitch, not 3 times, we need 4 times. And this will leave us with 68 stitches. And then we want to work even until the armhole is 19 centimeters, or again, double check on you. See how high the armhole needs to be. So 19 centimeters or required length. Almost there. We now need to work on the shoulders. So for this, again, the back of the neck is not a measurement that I took because I'm going to rely on the fact that it will work for me. I don't have a particularly thick or thin neck. So I'm going to do again proportion. So I know that I have 58 stitches here and I don't know what I need here, but I know that whatever it is, 68 to that number needs to be the same as 42 is to 18. And I find that that's 29. Not a fan of odd numbers. I've been working with even numbers, so this won't work even. So I'm going to make that 30. A little wider neck won't hurt by 1 stitch. Again, not a big difference. So mine needs to go to 30 stitches. So that means that I need to decrease 38 stitches. On each side, that means 19 stitches, half of 38. So let's look at how they do that. In their case, they're binding off stitches at the beginning of next 6 rows. So again, you got to divide that by 2 because there's going to be left side, right side, that's 2. Left side again, right side, that's 4. Left side again, right side, that's 6. So we're talking about 3 bind off events on each side. So my 19 stitches need to be bound off over 3 times. So if you do 19 divided by 3, we get 6.333. If you're good at mental math, you will have noted that 19 is awfully close to 18, and 18 divides by 3 gives you 6. So a good way of binding off 19 stitches in 3 chunks, you can go 6, 6, and then 7. And that gives you 19. In our case, we are going to do 6, then 6, then 7. So they're doing 4, 4, 4. We're going to do 6, 6, then 7. And that would leave us with 30 stitches for the back of the neck. And that completes the back piece. So you can apply the same ideas and method to the other parts of this garment or to any other pattern of your choosing. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like.